Hello everyone, this is Seper, Microsoft Tech Specialist Solution Architect in AWS. In this video, I'd like to show you how you can use Amazon's simple notification service in your .NET applications. The SNS service helps you create asynchronous applications. It's particularly useful in creating scalable distributed applications. On the one side, you can have a simple and small module that creates and publishes messages. This module is called the publisher. The publisher can be very small and simple or very complex application on its own. However, using SNS service, you don't have to change or further complicate that application if there's a need to add additional functionality. Instead, you can simply have any number of subscribers that respond and react to messages published by that publisher application. Amazon SNS supports a variety of ways that subscribers can receive messages from the publisher. The subscriber can be an AWS Lambda function running inside AWS. It can also be an Amazon Simple Queue service, or SQS. Using SQS as a subscriber allows having multiple worker applications to process SNS notifications. Subscribers can also receive notifications through email or SNS messages. And if you have a custom API that can't use any of these protocols, you can simply create an HTTP or HTTPS interface that receives SNS notifications. In this video, I'll show you a simple case of using SNS in a .NET application running inside AWS Lambda. We'll create a publisher application that sends messages to an SNS topic, and then we'll see how a Lambda function subscribed to that SNS topic receives and processes those messages. So let's see how that works in action. I need two projects, one publisher and one subscriber. So I'm opening Visual Studio. I'll create a new project. I'll select a simple console application with .NET Core. It could also be .NET Framework. I'll give it a name, SNS Publisher. And that creates the new project for me. It's a simple console application. I'll go to NuGet package management. I'll browse for SNS NuGet package. And there it is, AWS SDK, simple notification service. I'll install it. NuGet is installed. Now I need to add few lines of code. First of all, I'm adding the reference to Amazon.Simple Notification Service and also Amazon Simple Notification Service model. These two namespaces are required. Adding a more descriptive message. Please enter a key to send a message to SNS topic. So once the key is pressed, I want to send a message to an SNS topic. For that, I need a client, so I'll create a new client object, new Amazon.Simple Notification Service client. I also need a request. I'll create a new request object, new publish request. And from the constructor itself, I can pass three parameters. One is the topic ARN. So I need to create a topic first. I'm going to the AWS Explorer and creating a new topic in the Amazon SNS. And there it is. If I double click on it, I can see the topic and I can get the ARN of the topic from there. And that's what I need as the first parameter for the publish request. I'm also passing the message. So let's say this is a test message. I'm passing that parameter. And the third parameter can be the subject of the message that we're publishing to the topic. Now I can invoke the publish async method using the request I just created and a message indicating the message has been sent. All right, so that's my publisher. I also need another application which is going to be the subscriber receiving the messages that are sent to that topic. For that, I'm going to create another project in Visual Studio. This time I'm selecting AWS Lambda. For the project name, I'm choosing SNS subscriber function. And from the list of blueprints that are available in Visual Studio, I'm selecting simple SNS function. That's going to create a new project with the boilerplate code required to receive SNS notifications inside a Lambda function. So this is the new project. You can see there's a function CS file. If I open that, there's a class called function, and there's a function handler method with two parameters. One is SNS event, the other one context, and there's a for each loop that's going through the records inside that, and it's passing each record to the process record async, and that's sending them to the log functionality. I can test this using the mock lambda test tool already running on my desktop. I haven't published it to AWS yet. I just want to see if my function works or not. So if I run it using the lambda mock test tool, this is what I get. This is my function. From the list of example requests, I'm going to select the sample SNS request. And this is the body. The message, as you can see, says hello from SNS. If I execute it, from the log output, I can see the message, process record, hello from SNS. So if I change the message to something else, or if I change the request, any parts of the request, I can test whether the output of the request is going to be as expected or not. As you can see, the message is now showing the log output. All right, so now I know that my function works. Now I'm going to actually publish it to AWS so it can run as a Lambda function, as a serverless Lambda function. Function name SNS subscriber function. I also need to select a role for my function to execute. Selecting full Lambda role. And now the AWS Tools for Visual Studio plugin is uploading my Lambda function code into AWS Lambda. Once upload is completed, I automatically get the Lambda page opened in my Visual Studio. And from the event sources, I can add a new topic as a trigger to my application. I'm selecting source type as Amazon SNS and selecting SNS topic as the topic that I created. Now this topic is acting as a trigger to my Lambda function. And if I go back to my publisher application and execute it, it says press a key to send the message. I'm going to press the key, and now the message is published to the topic. Now I should see that in the log of my Lambda function. So if I go to the logs, these are the logs from CloudWatch. There's one entry here. If I download that, as you can see, the message is there. This is a test message, which indicates the application has been executed just now. So if I go back to my publisher application and change the code a little bit, let's change the read key to read line so I can receive a message from the console. And instead of the hard-coded message, I'm going to pass the message I received from the console. And also I have to change the initial message to more meaningful message, enter a message to send to the SNS topic. Now if I execute this, it's prompting me to enter a message. Let's say, this is awesome. I expect a message published. I expect to see that in the output of my Lambda function in CloudWatch logs. If I open that, as you can see, there's a new entry with the new message. Process record, this is awesome. Thank you.